Yeah. Yeah. So, good evening, and my name is Meenakshi Jadhav. So, I am working with Transform International Limited, and simultaneously, I am also associated with Pro HR Mitra. And today's esteemed speaker, Edwin Joel, is with us. Uh, So it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Joel. So with over a decade of diverse experience in the HR and administrative field, Mr. Joel has established himself as a leader and innovator in people development, currently serving as the senior manager people development at Anubhavam Technologies Private Limited. He has been instrumental in driving exponential growth and enhancing organizational capabilities. His academic credentials are impressive, holding a bachelor's degree in electronics and communication engineering, along with diploma in personal management and industrial relations and human resource development. So, additionally, he has a master's degree in human resource development from the renowned Ellen Wellington Institute of Management. Mr. Joel's professional journey includes various roles such as HR consultants, professor of management and organization redevelopment officer, to name a few. His skill sets span contract administration, vendor management, payroll, regulatory compliances, workforce and information management, and strategic risk mitigation. So he's also a certified lead auditor for multiple ISO standards, highlighting his dedication to excellence and continuous improvement. So fluency in five languages: English, Hindi, Tamil, Malayalam, and Marathi. So Mr. Joel brings a multicultural perspective to his work, enhancing his ability to connect and collaborate with diverse team. He is passionate about leveraging his knowledge and experience to foster a culture of holistic learning and safety within organizations. So please join in welcoming Mr. Indwin Joel as he shares his valuable insight with us today. So over to you, Mr. Joel. You are on mute.
Thank you, Meenakshi, for that wonderful introduction. We all are in our journey of learning, so I'll say still learning. So once again, thank you for that humble introduction, and thank you for this opportunity. So, Pro Mitra, thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And okay, so let's deep dive into our topic for the today. So, whenever we say compliance, it becomes a headache for everyone. And when we're looking at an ISO compliance, then it becomes tragedy for a lot of people because we don't come from a background where we are doing a root cause analysis or a differentiation. So we are looking at management perspective, how we can connect HR and the ISO management for an organization. So that would be the gesture. And so I would like to welcome all the people who are present. Thank you for joining in. So our objective for the day would remain like the role of HR in ISO management. We'll explore a few of the key ISO standards, and we will discuss about how HR plays a vital role in the ISO implementation for an organization, and few best case examples and scenarios. So introduction to ISO, then what's the HR's role and practical applications and case study. So when we look at ISO, it is International Organization for Standards. So it's a non-profit organization which looks at ensuring compliances, safety, quality, and efficiency across sectors. So when you're looking at manufacturing, or you're looking at IT, or you're looking at artificial intelligence, or you're looking at general quality management or healthcare, in different verticals or different sectorals, there is a quality standard being defined from the ISO, and they look at maintaining those standards because we are looking at a higher quality compliance from every institution to comply with. So when we compare ISO and HR, few of the ISO standards which we can correlate is the mother of all the ISO standards is ISO 9001. So that's called as the quality management system. Then with related to HR, we also look, HR is the a stakeholder for maintaining occupational health and safety. When you look at manufacturing setups and the blue economy and detailing, that is about ISO 45001. When we look at social responsibility or corporate social responsibility, we are getting detailing for that from ISO 26001. When we look at a pure ISO standard, which defines about the different functionalities and cross functionalities across the administrative, strategic, and proactive nature of the human resource, we're looking at ISO 30414 standard for that. So when we look at why an organization has to go for an ISO certification, is we are looking at improved efficiency and effectiveness. Both are different terminologies. Efficiency is different, effectiveness. Enhanced employee satisfaction and safety. Then increased credibility and marketability when we compare for an organization. When we compare for any organization without an ISO certification, they credibility and marketability, the brand value proposition which they have would be lesser when compared to an organization having an ISO certification. So, when we look at a holistic view of HR's role in ISO management, we're looking at six functionalities. One is about policy development and implementation, training and awareness programs, recruitment and selection. Let's deep dive into each of these verticals. So, how we will go about is when we look at the policy and documentation, we need to look at few of the strategies like understanding the ISO requirement. So a thorough HR has to understand what standard we are complying with and what are we going with, and then we also have to look at developing policies. So these policies has to align with the ISO standards. The next phase in that would be with regard to implementation, how we can go for implementing it. The second part is training and awareness session. So we need to look at identifying training needs, then how the training needs analysis has to be done with regard to knowledge gaps evaluation, and then we need to look at designing training programs for the organization. Then once we design, we need to look at conducting those learning and development initiatives for the organization. We need to also look at creating awareness for these standards using internal communication channel. At a lot of organization, HR also becomes a spoke for communication, so creating awareness also becomes the responsibility of the HR. Now, when we go for recruitment and selection, we're looking at an ISO compliant job description. Those have to be aligned with the ISO standards, which clearly defines your roles, responsibilities, the required competencies with regard to the ISO for each role and each hierarchy in the organization. How are we defining our selection process? How are we looking at the onboarding programs? How are the next one we are looking at is the performance management system. So we are looking at how we are setting performance standards, what is the regular performance reviews we are going to look at, how are we going to look at a cycle of continuous improvement. The next one, the fifth one we are looking at is employment engagement and communication. So we are promoting the ISO standard over here with regard to engagement of the employees in that. We are also looking at a feed forward mechanism, like with using surveys or suggestion box or regular meetings to look at regular feedbacks. Then the next one in employee engagement and communication we are looking at is our recognition and rewards. It's very critical for any organization to have a proper channelized rewards and recognition. The sixth one, which we are looking at, is monitoring and auditing compliances. So we are looking at like internal audit, corrective actions taken from those internal audits, what all internal audit we have conducted, what are the case history, what was the non-conformities, what was the major, what was the minor non-conformities, what was the scope for improvement, what was the observation. So from that we are looking at corrective actions to improvise our system. It's like a process re-engineering and looking at a root cause analysis to ensure that same issue is not getting repeated again. And we are looking at continuous monitoring, so that takes care of this six gamut for our HR's role in our ISO management. So now we are going to look at few of the options for each of these modularities who are the best examples in that field. So when we're looking at designing and implementing policies, Siemens has been great organization which had developed a good policy frameworks for them. When we look at learning and development or training and awareness programs, IBM sets apart with their robust learning terminologies and technologies development for their own internal teams. Auditing and monitoring compliance, Nestle is the best example to give in that portfolio. So when we look at this for developing and implementing policies, training and awareness programs, monitoring and auditing compliance, HR's role is like an involvement. They will be facilitating for these kind of activities in an organization, which will in turn lead towards the ISO certification. So the next one is HR's practices, which would support towards being compliant with the ISO requirement. So those we are looking at recruitment and selection process, performance management system, employee engagement and communication. So the best examples who are complying with ISO standards in these different functionalities of HRR for recruitment and selection, we're looking at Google. We are looking at GE, General Electric for performance management system. For employee engagement, we're looking at Cisco systems. So when we look at a case study, we are looking at a successful integration. Uh, we can take the best example of Toyota Motor Corporation, which had they had a challenge with integrating 9001. That's the basic ISO standard. From that standard only, we have different evolutions of different ISO standards. Like you have 26,000 for social responsibility, you have 45,000 for your occupational health and safety, you have 27001 for information security, you have 27701 for privacy information management system. So all for you have 42,001 for artificial intelligence. Also there is a compliance from ISO. So different standards get evolved from the basic standard. So 9001 is the basic standard which every organization can comply with, and then depending on their sector and their functionalities, they can go into different ISO standards. So they devised a quality management system and training, and with that, the result was enhanced product reliability and customer satisfaction was done. This is a case study of a successful integration of 9001 being implemented at Toyota Motor Corporation. So when we are applying as a HR person, applying ISO standards in our workplace, we the tips are like regular audits, proper training initiatives, proper communication channels. So for that, Apple has been a good example in that forte. So when we are implementing ISO standards in workplace, or for that matter, if you are implementing any new initiative in a workplace, the challenge is resistance to change. So the learning, unlearning, and relearning change, and the change perspective to adapt, adaptability or resilience becomes a detailing. So the solution is change management strategies has to be implemented by the HR, being a facilitator. So for that example given we have is about Procter and Gamble. So I leave the session open for any discussion, or you have any queries to the basic detailing. I'll be happy to answer. Ma'am, I think you are on mute, Meenakshi ma'am.
Yeah. So anyone has any questions here? So, Edwin, I wanted to understand, like, as you have mentioned about, like, what are the ISOs which are available, means like 9000 and other. So, like, based on your experience, what challenges you faced while implementing the things? Because in my two of my organizations, ISO was already there. In one organization, it was used to be a streamlined process, and everyone used to follow. And in one organization, it was like, chalo, theek hai, just to complete the things, we used to do that. So, what is your feedback or your take on it?
See, there has to be two ways. Either you can be a process driven organization where you comply.
Hmm.
So for that compliance, every organization has to comply with ISO 9001.
Right.
You get the certification or not get the certification, that is secondary. But if you put up systems in place, a process in place, everybody has to comply with that. So that adaptability towards the process flow has to be brought in from the top down approach. When the
Hmm.
top management itself starts implementing and looking into those possibilities, then it becomes a mandate in the organization, because it can't be a down bottom top approach, because it will not be successful, because this has to be implemented from the top down approach. Now the thing is, I have seen few organizations who don't go for 9001, but they go for like ISO 27001 and 27701. So for those organization, it becomes a challenge because basic frameworks are not available over there.
Hmm.
Process is not being set, but we go to like, it's like you are on step 1, but you want to jump into the step 10, but you want to skip. So it can't be done. See, I'll give you a better example. Practical example is at this juncture, if you ask Indwin to go and take a bull or a buffalo, if you want to lift it up at this juncture, it is not possible. But if on a daily basis, I start lifting a buffalo when from it was a calf, from the baby buffalo, if I had started lifting it up each day, if I lift it, if it becomes bigger, also it will be easy for me to lift it. So it's how you take that perspective towards your work and follow it through. Because if you make it as a mandatory and then force fitment, it will be a challenge because they will comply. अभी HR ने बोल दिया है तो we will comply. It becomes that kind of an attitude, but it has to be practiced every day. Then it becomes as a routine for them. By consciousness itself, they will comply with to that. Best example, if you look at product companies, they will have like product has to be by design. So your security features has to be by design, by default. So another issue is we are not hardwired to that. We as Indians are always hardwired to what you say, easy things, easy peasy kind of things, and we are very good at jugads, simple Indian standard jugads. So it becomes a challenge for every one of us to comply with things. And I had my seniors or my mentors told me, if you want to give the hardest work, give it to the person who is very big kamchor. He will ensure he will get it done at the least troublesome way for himself. So he's a smart guy. You have to give him that kind of a challenge. So if you give a challenge to everyone to comply with this strategy, they'll go about. I think I could bring in some perspective to your question.
Sure. Yes. Yes. Definitely.
And when we look at ISO, we have multiple standards. So ISO as a body, they will give only the documentation part for each ISO standards. You will have certifying bodies. So certifying bodies is like your DNV, TUV SUD, TUV Not, TUV Renault. So those are authorized from ISO to certify any organization. So they will go and audit an organization, and they will give the certification saying, see, this XYZ company is complying with this standard. So for each standard, there are different controls and different detailing to that.
Got it. Got it, Edwin. So, any from the audience, do you have any questions? I think we can go ahead.
Okay, ma'am. So what I'll do is I'll share few of the resources with your end, ma'am. You can I'll share this PPT also so that everyone has it, and basic details they can take it up. If you go and research, you will find all the ISO basic ISO information is available on your Wikipedia's. If you want to read through more information, you will have to buy those standards. So there are three parts to getting you certified. One is you can either become as an internal auditor, where it is very internal. That's the basic one. And next one is lead auditor or a lead implementer. Lead auditor is one who is authorized to do audits for an organization. Lead implementer means he's the one who will go for implementing those standards in an organization. I think we have a question. As a HR fresher, which ISO plays important role for recruitment? Ma'am, not as a HR fresher. For any HR, if you want to comply with ISO standard, ISO 9001 becomes the basic one. That's the quality management system. So in that, you have one segment which is truly looking at recruitment. So in recruitment, it will look at proper job descriptions for every role, proper competencies. So that is one way of looking at recruitment. अगर आप if you go beyond the recruitment and selection process, it will have what is your evaluation process for the selection. If you go to the next step, you will have your onboarding, right? So it will ask what is your onboarding matrix to that, what is your BGV process, your background verification process for that. Do you do it before the person is onboarded or after the onboard? So if you go for after he is being onboarded, how are you litigating or mitigating the risk? For example, if I am a person who's going to join an organization and I have some issues with my background verification, so when I go without that clearance, it becomes a challenge for them because I might get deputed on a client place or something. Then it becomes as a challenge because the reputation of the organization is at stake. So ISO 9001 is the basic one which goes with every department, every organization can comply with. So, ma'am, if people want to scan, they can scan and connect to me on LinkedIn. People feel free to ask questions because there's nothing as a right question or a wrong question. Question is a question. Every question will have some solution. You have something not related to IS also. If you want to ask, please feel free to ask. The forum is for HR people to collaborate and learn.
Good evening. My name is Binu.
Hi,
The
Binu. Very good
company,
evening.
the company which I work with at present, the entire process is driven manually.
Okay.
So, how effective it would be if we start implementing, and the systems are not in place at all.
You'll have to formulate all the policies and systems in place. Then only you can go with ISO. And ISO helps for formulating all those records in place.
Okay, if it is in manual, will that be effective if we go for ISO?
Yes.
It's not
See,
compulsory. That's some automation.
it's not mandatory that you have everything automated. There are few things you still will have a record keeping has to be maintained as per our Indian law. The HR
Mhm.
compliances, few of the things they will have a mandate requirement. But you make your process and your policy so robust, saying they don't come back to you giving the wrong answers. Like if you put up a policy saying after 3 months there's a confirmation, then you should have a documentation saying why the confirmation was not given. If the confirmation is not given, uh, did we initiate a PIP, performance improvement plan?
Mhm.
So you should have a flow for every process and a documentation check with a checklist. So it's like our Indian constitution, ma'am. You have your rights also, but you have your fundamental duties also. So ISO also has that same compliance. It will give you privileges. It will give you a stop clock also. So it follows a plan, do, check, and PDCA cycle.
Okay, even when we go for manual, then
It
it
is
will be
also
easier.
perfectly fine. Only thing in the manual thing, it will help you out with the documentation process so that you have a flow to every process. The entire organization will have a flow map, a flow chart saying how is the recruitment done, how is the selection done, what all things, everything will be detailed in that.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So I have just shared the feedback link so that we should get the feedback about this session, as well as what is your opinion and what are the further more sessions you would like to understand. I request everyone to please share your feedback. So do you have any more questions for Mr. Edwin? So great, Edwin. Thanks for the joining the session, and I hope everyone must have taken up the LinkedIn scan, and you can anytime connect with Mr. Indwin and just check out with him about the ISO standards, maybe one-on-one. Yes. So thank you. Thanks everyone for joining this session, and thank you, Indwin, for sparing
Thank you,
your
ma'am.
time. Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Sure,
And
ma'am.
the audience, there will be another session on the. We normally do the such kind of sessions on second and fourth Friday. We call upon great speakers from the HR fraternity itself, so that they can share their knowledge with us. So thank you for joining these sessions. Thank you all. Bye bye.